Course 4, Neuromotor Function and Social Cognition. Welcome to Week 5, What Teachers Can Do to Support Social Cognition. So we have 3 main learning objectives for this week. The first is to apply knowledge and vocabulary related to social thinking. The next is to implement strategies and evaluate their efficacy by developing interventions and accommodations for social thinking. And finally, we're going to demonstrate knowledge of social thinking in the context of other constructs. So we're going to continue going down that path of pursuing the ways that the constructs interact with each other, complicate matters for kids, and also potentially offer opportunities for thinking about ways to offer supports that leverage strengths and interests. So this week we're going to focus really on what teachers can do in the classroom to support students' social experiences and allow them to develop and strengthen social cognition. A good starting place for this can be to look within the curriculum itself. So that way teachers can help draw students' attention to the social aspects of topics of study and then support students in analyzing and unpacking the social components of historical events, literature, or within social studies. So, for example, one could imagine a history unit covering topics such as the suffrage movement and women's right to vote, organized around the theme of empathy. Empathy could also be a thematic focus when studying the causes of the Civil War, World War II, Spanish colonialism in California, things like that. And by thinking strategically about the particular aspects of social cognition teachers think students in the class would most benefit from addressing, teachers can then make really thoughtful choices regarding the specific features of the curriculum to highlight and to feature to support positive social understanding. Another example, beyond thematic or topical areas of focus, would be that teachers can also draw attention to the social understanding that goes into identifying perspectives, describing perspectives, and synthesizing multiple perspectives on the same topic. So this kind of work is called for anyway by the instructional approaches targeting the Common Core standards, and it's foundational for rigorous academic work in general. At the same time, close attentions to differences in perspective can be explicitly connected to social learning for kids that are struggling. Helping all students draw connections between the perspectives of historical figures or characters, or examining the ways perspectives are embedded in textbooks, articles in the media, and books can really start to raise students' awareness of the ways social interactions are driven by perspectives held and are often unspoken by individual actors. And finally, on this slide, we have another example called Writing for an Audience. And this is an example of a curricular opportunity to address social cognition through writing for different audiences. So as students work to meet the standards for writing that include addressing audiences, teachers can help them identify potential opinions, feelings, and perspectives of their intended audience, then identify the particular ideas and points to raise such that those audiences will find their arguments particularly compelling. Often, drawing out these connections between the curriculum and social cognition involves very little to no change to the curriculum content itself. It's really more a shift in the emphasis of the curriculum and the discussions that teachers are leading with students around the existing curricular topics and the associated learning tasks. So in starting to think about ways to highlight, feature, and pull out important aspects of social cognition within the curriculum, it's really an interesting starting place just to look at what's already there and see if you can identify ways to manipulate certain questions asked or points raised when assigning tasks such that the social cognition components are featured or emphasized with students. Okay, in these next 2 slides, I'm going to present some other ways teachers can address social cognition in the classroom by cultivating and supporting a supportive learning environment. So, as always, the suggestions I present here are of course not intended to be an exhaustive list. Instead, they're really there just to help you start thinking about ways attention to social cognition could be incorporated in your own classroom or your direct work with students. So this is a launch point for idea generating, again, not summative. So the ideas on this page focus on ways to support interpersonal interactions among students and establish an environment that is inclusive of social diversity and difference. And so we're looking at ways that we can look right to the structure of classroom management and the day-to-day routines in the classroom as opportunities for this. So first, multi-voice discussions send both really explicit and implicit messages to students regarding the value of individuals and individual perspectives in the classroom. Although many teachers already aim to make sure students have opportunities to participate in discussions, attention to social cognition may support teachers in making sure that particular students called upon or whose ideas are featured represent this range of perspectives and ideas within a class. So in looking for ways to do this, questions to ask yourself may include some of the following. Do the same students tend to dominate group discussions? Are there ways to upend that if that's the case? Do I, as a teacher, tend to call on students whose perspectives are most similar or aligned with my own? And if so, are there ways to select students that will represent and present other perspectives? How could I, as a teacher, organize groups or lead discussions to make sure these multiple and possibly conflicting perspectives are included? Another way to approach cultivating a learning environment to support social cognition through classroom management and routines is this idea of social autopsies. And I touched upon it, I mentioned it briefly in our GoToMeeting session last week, and we're going to think about it more in depth. This week you have an assignment where you'll be reading about social skills autopsies as well by Dr. Rick Lavoie. And really what that's about is when students experience breakdown in social interactions, social autopsies, which are described in your reading this week, are really a tool for helping make aspects of social cognition and social challenge more explicit. So for students who struggle with social cognition, this kind of direct attention and analysis of social interaction can be particularly important for finding new ways to interact and behave with peers. And finally, the way we address resolving conflicts in the classroom offers many opportunities for students to engage with each other to practice working on social interactions. So if a specific and particular approach to conflict resolution is established in the classroom, it can be particularly helpful for those students who are having more difficulty making sense of the subtleties of social interaction on their own. Having a practiced routine to fall back on when in conflicts with peers also really allows these students to practice social skills and develop social strengths in a more predictable environment, and one which also then offers opportunities for the peers that may have more of a social strength to support others that have a social weakness, because we're all working within the same framework for how conflicts should be approached and resolved. Okay. Next, we have the idea of positive recognition to cultivate a learning environment that supports social cognition. And we have these three ideas here. So establishing this kind of supportive classroom environment really makes space for students with social challenges to work on their areas of weakness and take social risks without the fear of rejection or humiliation, which is particularly important, of course, when thinking about the construct of social cognition in general. So, as always, these examples are a starting place and are not considered to cover all positive classroom environments or what they might look like. That said, here are some ideas. So first we have this idea of put-ups that can draw attention to the ways students can use words to support each other. And creating kind put-ups for peers offers practice in pro-social behavior. So in addition, attention to put-ups sends the message to the classroom community at large that kindness matters and kindness is important. And if you look at that picture on the bottom right, that's just one example of a relatively cute way to write put-ups on hearts that kids could give each other. You could post them places that can be reserved for a special day of the week. They can go into a community basket, so you don't know the author of the put-ups. There you could have a system in which students draw names randomly for peers in the classroom to write put-ups for. There's lots of ways to organize these kinds of pro-social behaviors in the classroom. Another idea would be to think about family histories. So by including family histories in the classroom, either through the curriculum itself or as a special and additional activity, Students can get to know each other more deeply and personally, which supports building a sense of connectedness among peers, friendships, and a sense of community. Finally, establishing routines such as selecting and presenting work for something like a proud wall would give students a chance to see each other's strengths, interests, and differences. So the routine itself is intended to make room for individual difference and variation, and this allows students the chance to really celebrate each other's successes and feelings of accomplishment. So some, none, or all of these ideas may appeal to you to use in your own practice. Please take them or leave them as it's most useful to you. But as a reminder, the idea here is to encourage you to look for ways to establish and cultivate a learning environment that supports attention to social cognition, and in which students with strengths and weaknesses can work together and help each other to improve social skills and interactions at school. Okay, so finally for this week you have these two main assignments. The first is a discussion forum called Guided Social Interactions in the Classroom. And so you can go ahead and click on the Moodle page for the prompt for that, and please complete your first post, if possible, by Wednesday or Thursday, and then your 2 follow-up posts by Sunday night. And then you'll have a reading response for this reading on social autopsies, so you can get a little bit more familiar with what social autopsies are, how they operate, and think about if there's ways that either the social autopsy as it's defined itself could be useful, or some version of the idea of a social autopsy could be adapted in a way that's more useful for the work that you do. Okay, that's it for now. I hope you have a great few days, and I will look forward to seeing you Wednesday night at our GoTo meeting session. Bye-bye.